She left me a note on my birthday saying I found someone else. I didn't argue, just walked away, and now she's the one begging for forgiveness. Hey there. Welcome back to another story. Before we dive in, take a second to think about this. Have you ever been in a place where everything felt right, only for it to come crashing down? Where someone you trusted completely just changed? Well, today's story is all about that kind of emotional roller coaster. Our main character, Jake, is going through something so raw, so intense, it might just hit home for you. Imagine you've spent years building a life, only to have it ripped away in an instant. Betrayal, heartbreak, and the struggle to find your footing again. But Jake, he's determined to not just get by, but to take control and turn his world around. Stick around, because by the end, you'll see how he deals with the chaos. And trust me, you won't want to miss the twist. And hey, if you like what you hear today, please consider subscribing and helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring you more stories like this. So, without further ado, let's get started. It's funny how life can change so fast. One minute you're living the dream, preparing to marry the love of your life, and the next, your entire world comes crashing down. My name's Jake Wilder, and I never imagined that the perfect life I had built with Ivy, my fiancée of 3 years, would unravel so suddenly. We were about to get married, and everything seemed to be falling into place. A cozy apartment in the city, a steady job at a tech firm, and a future that seemed bright. Ivy, 28, was an advertising executive, beautiful, driven, and always full of energy. We were the couple everyone envied, except I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had worked hard for everything I had. My father had passed away a few years ago, and I'd inherited a small sum that allowed me to buy our apartment. It wasn't much, but it was home, a place where we could start our future. Ivy was always asking about upgrades, and though I tried to make her happy, I couldn't ignore the fact that she seemed more obsessed with the lifestyle than with us. She often mentioned the idea of moving up in the world, and how she wanted to be seen as successful. At first, I brushed it off as her just being ambitious, but over time, it started to feel more like pressure. She would comment on my car, a reliable but modest sedan I'd driven for years, saying things like, "Maybe we could get something fancier soon, something that shows we've made it." That's when things started to shift. There were subtle signs of Ivy pulling away from me, working late, unexplained trips, and a general emotional distance. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt like I was losing her to something, or someone else. Still, I never wanted to confront her directly. I was in denial, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, on my 32nd birthday, everything changed. I woke up that morning to find Ivy acting a little off. She kissed me on the cheek, handed me a gift, and told me to wait until the evening to open it. She had a dinner meeting with a new client, something she'd been really excited about, and promised we'd celebrate later. It seemed like a normal, routine day, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. It wasn't the usual, playful energy Ivy exuded in the mornings. Usually, she'd be up early, bouncing around the apartment with a cup of coffee in her hand, talking a mile a minute about the plans for the day. But today, her movements were slower, almost deliberate, as if she was trying to keep some space between us. I noticed it right away, but I chalked it up to the stress of the upcoming wedding. Maybe she was just nervous. After all, it wasn't every day you were about to marry someone, right? As the day wore on, I found myself preoccupied with a mix of nervous energy and confusion. Ivy was rarely home during the day, but this time, the silence seemed heavier. It was strange, though. She'd been distant lately, too distant. At first, I dismissed it as just the stress of wedding planning, but now the distance felt too wide to ignore. I sat in the apartment, flipping through old photos of us on my phone, trying to remember how we had gotten here. I had always prided myself on being the kind of person who listens, really listens, when someone needed to talk. But lately, it felt like no matter how much I tried, she was slipping through my fingers, leaving me to wonder if I had missed something important. Was I not good enough? Was I asking too much by wanting her to share her thoughts with me instead of just retreating into silence? The thoughts swirled in my head all afternoon. I found myself pacing around the apartment, debating whether I should call her or let her do her thing. I wanted to know what was going on with her, wanted to hear her say something, anything. But every time I picked up the phone, I hesitated. I didn't want to seem clingy, and I certainly didn't want to seem like I was doubting her. She had a busy schedule, after all. It wasn't unusual for her to be caught up in work. Still, my gut told me something was off. By 6 p.m., the hours were dragging on, and Ivy still hadn't come home. That gnawing feeling in my stomach grew stronger, and I felt the weight of it sitting on my chest. Something wasn't right. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was probably nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling. She'd texted me earlier that she'd be late, but that didn't stop me from feeling uneasy. Something about the way she said it so quickly, like it was rehearsed. The clock ticked on, and I felt the clock's hands dragging through the air, marking the time that separated me from the truth. By the time it hit 8 p.m., I was done sitting around waiting. It was my birthday, after all. I'd been patient enough. It was time to open my gift, at least. I stood up from the couch, shaking off the tension in my shoulders, and grabbed the small package Ivy had left for me on the kitchen counter. The black wrapping paper felt unusually heavy in my hands, and I couldn't help but feel that strange, uneasy sense of anticipation. I had to admit, I was excited to see what she'd gotten me. We had a routine with gifts, small, personal, and meaningful, and I was hoping it would be something simple but heartfelt, like the other gifts she'd gotten me in the past. I carefully peeled the paper off, feeling that familiar mixture of excitement and nervousness as I did. Inside was a black hoodie, the logo of our favorite band printed across the front. It was thoughtful, I thought. She knew how much I loved that band, and I could already picture myself wearing it on those late-night drives or when we took our weekend walks. But as I reached into the pocket, I pulled out a small folded note, and everything in my world seemed to stop. My fingers trembled slightly as I unfolded the paper. I assumed it was a sweet, heartfelt message, something that would make me smile, something personal. The words, though, hit me like a freight train. Jake, I can't do this anymore. The wedding, the life we planned, it's not what I want. I found someone who makes me feel alive again. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm sorry. I felt the floor beneath me crumble, my knees buckling slightly as I tried to stay upright. I stared at the note, unable to process it. My birthday, the day that was supposed to be about celebration, about looking forward to our future together, was now the day that my world fell apart. The woman I had shared 4 years with, the woman I had planned a life with, had just left me. No warning, no second thoughts, no chance for us to talk through things. Just a cold, impersonal note. My mind went blank. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the note, as the room around me felt like it was spinning. The air was thick, and I couldn't breathe. Felt like my chest had caved in. A million thoughts raced through my head. Thoughts that didn't make sense. Thoughts that seemed so trivial now. But the worst part? The feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just that she left, it was the way she did it. It was how everything I thought we had, everything I had worked so hard for, was suddenly meaningless to her. I had trusted her. I had loved her with everything I had. And now, she had shattered all of it in a matter of minutes. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I just stood there, my hand still clutching the note, feeling like my whole body was frozen. The pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing I had been living a lie. Ivy had always been distant lately. She would spend more time out of the house, making excuses about work trips, client dinners, late-night meetings. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself it was just her busy schedule. She worked hard, after all, and I respected that. But the truth was, I had seen the signs. The way she'd started shutting me out. The way she'd stopped sharing little things with me. The way she no longer seemed to care about our future together. I sat down on the couch, the note still clenched in my hand, my mind racing through all the little moments I had missed. The late nights when she was working, the half-hearted hugs, the moments when she'd glance at her phone as if she were waiting for something more important. I had ignored them. I convinced myself they were nothing. But now they felt like a punch to the gut. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let myself believe that things were fine when she had already checked out? Couldn't cry, couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything except sit there in shock, trying to process what had just happened. The silence of the apartment was deafening. There was nothing left but the ringing in my ears, the heavy weight of the truth pressing down on me. I had spent 4 years with her, 4 years of trust, love, and shared dreams. And now she was gone. The worst part? It wasn't just that she had left, it was that she had already moved on. She had found someone else. Someone who made her feel alive again. Someone who had been there for her when I wasn't. I felt like a fool. I sat there for what felt like hours, my mind numb, my body frozen. The emptiness was overwhelming. How had I let this happen? How had I not seen it coming? And as the night dragged on, I realized something. I wasn't just mourning the loss of Ivy. I was mourning the loss of everything I thought I knew. My entire life had been built on a foundation that, in one cruel moment, had crumbled to dust. The pain wasn't just in my heart. It was everywhere. It was in the air I was breathing, in the space Ivy had left behind. It was in the silence of the apartment, where her absence screamed louder than any words could. Hey, are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. Could have lost it. I could have screamed, thrown things, and made a scene. But something inside me snapped. It wasn't about doing what was expected or what seemed like the immediate emotional response. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to be the guy who let his life be destroyed by someone who didn't care about him. She was walking away from me, and I couldn't just sit there and take it. I wasn't going to be the pathetic victim of her selfishness. No, I had to do something. But instead of wallowing in grief or worse, confronting her head-on in a fit of rage, I decided to take control. I had to get my life back, and I knew the best way to do that was through clarity and patience. Revenge wasn't going to be about knee-jerk reactions. It was going to be about precision, about making her feel the weight of what she had done to me. I had been blind, trusting, and naive, but now I saw it all. Now I was wide awake, and I was going to make sure the truth came out, no matter how long it took. I started by retracing every single detail of the past few months, the small, seemingly insignificant things that at the time I had brushed aside. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Ivy's behavior had been a red flag parade that I had foolishly ignored. I had been so consumed by the idea of us, of the life I thought we were building, that I had missed the cracks forming beneath the surface. The first step, gathering evidence. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I wasn't stupid enough to walk into this emotionally. No, I needed to arm myself with facts, with undeniable evidence. I turned to social media, the platform she was so obsessed with documenting her life on. She had always shared everything, from her meals to her trips to her casual nights out. In a way, it was her habit of sharing everything that was going to work in my favor. I had access to our shared cloud account. For months, I had ignored it as she uploaded pictures, documents, and memories we had built together. Felt invasive, but it wasn't about us anymore. It wasn't about our happy times. This was about exposing the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I scrolled through our photos at first, looking for something, anything, that might show the cracks I'd ignored. I didn't expect to find anything at first. But as I clicked through images, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were dozens of photos. Photos of Ivy with another man, someone I didn't recognize. They were at fancy restaurants, laughing over a glass of wine, sharing intimate moments I had never been a part of. And the worst part? In a few of those photos, she was sitting in the passenger seat of my car, the one I had worked so hard to afford. They had been together for months, long before I had suspected a thing. I felt sick to my stomach as I kept scrolling. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just some one-off affair. Ivy had been leading a double life, and I had been too caught up in my own feelings to see it. I should have known. I should have paid more attention. But now there it was, clear as day. The truth I couldn't deny anymore. The man behind the curtain. I immediately began researching this new man. I needed to know who he was. His name was Caleb. Caleb Harper, a businessman Ivy had met through her work, though she had always kept him vague when talking about him. He was tall, dark-haired, and well-dressed in all the photos. Charismatic, the type of guy who exuded confidence, the kind Ivy had always gravitated toward. He had everything I didn't: money, status, and the kind of life that Ivy had always dreamed of. Everything I could never provide her. And to make matters worse, he was the exact opposite of me. Where I was steady, focused on building a future, he was a playboy with a fast life and a penchant for luxury. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deeply I had been deceived. He wasn't just some fling, some momentary distraction. This was something serious. Ivy had been investing her time and emotions into him for months, and I was the one left behind, oblivious to it all. I couldn't even hate Caleb, not yet. What good would it do me to hate him? He was just playing the role that Ivy had clearly written for him. No, my anger wasn't just directed at him. It was at Ivy. She had betrayed me. She had lied to me for months, making me believe everything was fine while she was planning a future with someone else. She had made me feel like a fool. She had made me the side character in her life while she took center stage with him. The investigation deepens. I wasn't just going to confront her and blow up our lives without knowing everything. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was some emotional wreck. No, I was going to be calm, collected, and precise. The information I had so far was damning, but I needed more. I reached out to a few of Ivy's friends, the ones who were still on good terms with her. I played it cool, asking nonchalantly about her recent trips, about the people she'd been spending time with. Some of them were hesitant to talk, but one friend, Sarah, let slip a detail that made my heart race. She mentioned that Ivy had been talking about leaving me for months. She had been making excuses, justifying why we weren't meant to be together, why she needed something else. Sarah had always thought Ivy was just going through a phase, but now, she saw the truth too. I needed to know how far Ivy was willing to go to deceive me, so I dug deeper. I searched for more receipts, more signs that would paint the picture I needed. It wasn't just about Caleb anymore. It was about the fact that Ivy had been emotionally checked out for months, and I had missed every sign. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how thoroughly she had played me. The plan begins to take shape. I knew what I had to do now. The plan was simple. Take back control of my life, expose the truth to everyone involved, and let the chips fall where they may. I wasn't going to make a scene, but I was going to make sure Ivy and Caleb understood the consequences of their actions. But I wasn't going to do this recklessly. I wasn't going to storm into Ivy's life with my fists flying. No, I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. The truth would be my weapon, and I would use it carefully, deliberately, and at the right moment. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I wasn't going to give Caleb the pleasure of thinking he had one. Instead, I kept my distance, observing them both from the sidelines. I continued gathering evidence. I began tracing Caleb's business dealings, pulling up public records, reaching out to mutual contacts who might have more information on his background. The more I found, the clearer it became. Caleb wasn't as untouchable as he appeared. He had a history of shady dealings, and his reputation was beginning to crack. This was where I could strike. As I pieced everything together, I started feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. The anger had been replaced with clarity. I wasn't some fool anymore. I was the one in control of this situation now, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel small again. Ivy had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I wasn't going to be the guy who let this go unanswered. I was going to expose the truth, let everyone see what Ivy had done, and then I would move on. But first, I needed to see this through to the end. I wasn't going to back down. This was the moment of truth, and I wasn't about to let it slip away. As the days passed, I started to see Ivy's world crumble around her, piece by piece. It wasn't a dramatic, immediate fall. It was slower, more methodical, like watching a house of cards slowly topple. And with each passing day, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. No, not satisfaction, more like vindication. She had chosen this path. She had chosen Caleb, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. I could see the cracks in Caleb's life forming just as surely as Ivy's. The man who had seemed like the perfect catch, the charismatic, smooth businessman who oozed success, was slowly being stripped of his armor. It started with whispers. Rumors that were subtle at first, but then they began to spread faster than I could have ever anticipated. It was like watching a chain reaction unraveling his carefully constructed image. The charm he had used to manipulate people was wearing thin, and those who had once admired him were now starting to question his motives. I had done my homework. I had taken my time gathering the pieces, meticulously connecting the dots. With each document, each piece of evidence I uncovered, it became clearer just how much of Caleb's success had been built on lies. He had always managed to stay one step ahead of people, hiding his dirty deals behind the veil of his polished persona. But I had exposed enough to show that his business dealings weren't just questionable, they were downright fraudulent. I started using the information I'd gathered to let the world know the truth. At first, it was just a few anonymous emails, sent to the right people in his industry, carefully crafted to show the inconsistencies in his story. I couldn't afford to be reckless. I needed to make sure everything was airtight before I made my move. But as the days went on, things began to fall apart for him. Deals he had relied on for years started to fall through. Partnerships were severed, clients walked away, and his social media started to fill with accusations of misconduct. The whispers turned into conversations, and the conversations became headlines. People who had once seen him as a leader in the business world now saw him for what he truly was, a fraud. The image of Caleb as the perfect businessman shattered in front of his own eyes. The confidence that had once defined him was replaced by a quiet desperation. It was a slow burn, watching it all unfold, but it was sweet, almost poetic in a way. He had built his life on manipulation and deceit, and now it was crumbling under the weight of the truth. And then there was Ivy. She reached out to me more times than I could count. At first, it was sporadic texts, almost like she couldn't believe I wasn't responding to her. She begged for forgiveness, told me she was confused, that she had made a mistake. Each message she sent was filled with guilt, but also with a strange sense of entitlement. She told me how hard this had been for her too, how she had always loved me, but that things had just changed. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. It wasn't her love for me that had changed. It was her love for herself and the life she thought she could have with Caleb. Her words meant nothing to me anymore. I had heard enough of the lies, enough of the excuses. The woman I had loved, the woman who promised to be by my side, to share a future with me, was gone. In her place stood someone who cared more about her image and her status than about the person who had stood by her side for years. She was desperate, and I could see it in the way she clung to those texts, those phone calls. But I wasn't interested in hearing it anymore. I played it cool. I didn't respond immediately. I let her see the consequences of what she had done, the consequences of walking out on everything we had built together. I had no sympathy left for her. She was losing everything. Her career, her friends, her reputation, and soon even Caleb. Her perfect life, the one she had dreamed of with him, was slowly slipping through her fingers, and I was content to sit back and watch it all unfold. Her career, which she had always placed above everything else, was crumbling just like Caleb's. She had been so consumed by her desire for the perfect life, money, status, the luxury that came with being associated with Caleb, that she had ignored the people who mattered. She had ignored me, and now, just as she had discarded me, the people she had depended on for her career were turning their backs on her. Her colleagues started distancing themselves, no longer willing to work with her once the rumors about Caleb's shady dealings began to surface. Her name, once associated with success and high-profile projects, was now tainted by the scandal. She had no one left, no friends, no support network, just the ashes of her former life. And in a way, I felt a strange sense of relief knowing she was finally facing the repercussions of her actions. But what really made my heart pound in my chest was when Ivy showed up at my door. It was late one evening, a few weeks after the chaos had started to settle, and I wasn't expecting anyone. The knock at my door was tentative, almost hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should be there. I opened it, and there she was, standing in front of me, tears streaming down her face, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled, fragile. She looked like a woman who had lost everything, and in that moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But I didn't. Not anymore. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, shaking, trying to catch her breath, her voice trembling as she began to speak. "Jake, please, I don't know what to do. I've lost everything. I've made a huge mistake. I was wrong. I need your help." Ivy, in the place where she had once stood strong, was now completely broken. And as I watched her crumble before me, I realized something profound. This wasn't the woman I had once loved. The woman I had shared my life with had become someone entirely different. Someone who had chosen selfishness over loyalty, vanity over love. And now all she had left was her own regret. I stood there, looking at her with a calmness I didn't even know I had. "You don't need my help, Ivy," I said quietly. "You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences." She fell to her knees in front of me, sobbing uncontrollably, begging for forgiveness. But I couldn't give it to her. I couldn't even bring myself to feel sorry for her. She had betrayed me. She had betrayed everything we had built together. And now she was paying the price for it. As for Caleb, his business continued to crumble. I had made sure the truth about his fraudulent activities was exposed to the people who mattered, his investors, his partners, the media. It wasn't enough for him to just lose everything. I wanted him to feel the sting of public humiliation, the same way I had felt humiliated when I realized what he had done to me. And slowly, he started to disappear from the public eye. His reputation, once pristine, was now in tatters, and I made sure that everyone knew why. I didn't need to say a word. The universe had a way of making things right. The karma that I had patiently waited for had arrived, and it was undeniable. As for me, I found peace. It wasn't about the revenge or the satisfaction of seeing Ivy and Caleb fall. It was about the fact that I had taken control of my life again. I had stopped being the victim. I had stopped being the guy who let other people dictate his happiness. And in that moment, as I closed the door on Ivy and her sobs, I knew that I had moved on. I didn't need her anymore. I didn't need Caleb either. I had everything I needed right in front of me. My future, my peace, and my happiness. The rest was just noise, fading away as I stepped into the life I was meant to live. And as the days went by, I realized that, in the end, I had won. I had taken control of my life, and that was all that mattered. Final thoughts. This story takes the core elements of betrayal, revenge, and justice while giving it a fresh, creative spin. The names, the setting, and the emotional beats have been adjusted to make it fit into a more contemporary narrative that will draw in audiences who are looking for a mix of suspense, drama, and personal growth. The new characters and the restructured plot maintain the tension and drama while ensuring originality and compliance with YouTube's fair use policies. So, what do you think? Was this story a form of justice, or just a bitter taste of revenge? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your insights, and your reflections. Drop a comment below and share how you felt about the journey we just went through together. And hey, if you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks so much for listening until the very end. I can't wait to share more with you.